With the release of Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, it's time to rank all three Poohniverse movies from my least favorite to my favorite. Welcome Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below, have you seen all three Poohniverse movies from Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 1 and 2, and Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare as the most recent edition? Let me know all that. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. And getting right into it, in last place we have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Now, unlike most where they find this a little bit preferable to the original, this one just does not stand out to me. The story seems to be unbalanced, the way it's building upon the characters, what it's doing with the story. It doesn't necessarily feel like it knows whether it wants to be absolutely ridiculous or absolutely straightforward with its story. And when it goes either direction, it doesn't necessarily quite click with me with the way they build and introduce these new villains, what we get, taking on these Disney icons, horrifying them, and everything we get out of Tigger with Pooh and the owl just goes about its way that is unique. I understand what they're trying to attempt, owl being the most unique for not necessarily quite being able to transform an owl into the picture because it's a human in the costume, but just the way they take all these scenes, there are certain dark scenes here and there where I never quite was able to figure out what was Tigger all the time, making him look so similar to Pooh, having this faded effect of what his fur looked like. It's not a poignant orange, and they did not do well with the lighting of all the dark scenes. That's just what I personally experienced watching this film, having seen these all only once, but just the way they go about the dynamics of the story, it seems to try and do a little bit better with taking itself seriously with what it's doing with its environment, with its characters, but that personally did not take the flavor to me with the way that it's establishing its story. It felt like this is a B horror movie that just does not try and work effectively when it takes itself more seriously. And so that's why it takes me back a bit to where it's just cringe at sometimes, things that just do not balance out, things that feel contrived and tripped up to the nature of how the writers want it to, and so that's where it just takes me out of the film as a whole. And at number 2 we have Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Now this one, I like the approach that it's trying to do with its premise, but once it's executed on film, it feels too long of a story, what it's developed out to be. That sounds better on paper than it does developed out. What we get out of this weird thing, it makes sense for Peter Pan being this isolated sort of boy to never feel like he's going to grow up, make him into this horror creature of sorts, this psychotic human that's trying to convince Tinkerbell that he's giving her fairy dust, that's actually the drugs, and how they're taking the kids into these dark places. What you're building about with the story, it can have some moments. I understand what it's building up to, but again, there's certain moments where it still feels imbalanced with whether it's trying to be too serious and make you believe everything's happening, but still not having the right feels that it's really capturing something that makes sense as a psychological killer that's taking all these kids, that's believing in the land of Neverland and taking these kids there. So what all that establishes built onto, there's like nice little Easter eggs that I didn't expect to be blended in so well. The ticking bomb alligator, what we get out of Tinkerbell, her character, as well as Michael, those are the two best preferences that I have with this film, how they develop those characters. Peter Pan definitely does have his moments, but at the same time, there's things that it's just not necessarily as entertaining as the premise sounds on paper, as the execution sort of handles the proper motivation for all of these characters. ultimately leading to be very mixed on the project, but not necessarily having enjoyed it to begin with. So it really takes back this settlement of wanting to rewatch this again, or just being able to experience what this project had to say as a whole, since it was really Disney-fied in the most psychotic way in what it's trying to tackle. And at number 1, we have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 1. Now, how this tackles the story, it's very silly, it's corny, what it tackles on with the kills, that's what I'm here for. All the kills, certain things that go about along the way, and I feel it does that a little bit better, how they tackle Piglet, how they tackle Winnie the Pooh, and taking that onto a Christopher Robin tale about how Christopher Robin left Winnie the Pooh. So Winnie the Pooh is going dangerous, trying to tell all his friends, just getting angry. It's not necessarily proper. It still feels like it's a horror B-movie that you don't necessarily have a way to win unless you have a high production. Obviously, there's things that are set back with this cheap budget, but that doesn't necessarily bother me quite so much, as I understand what the project was all about, how it all gets pulled off, and being the first film in this universe, it's something that tackles the handling well of what it's doing all with its characters that aren't necessarily complex. They're not something that you take seriously, not something that you say, I love what all is going on with the story, with how these things go about, but the environment is in the right place, the setting works effectively, and the characters are fitting to the story, taking on these nice Easter eggs, these nice nods that the bear can't talk, that Piglet goes about these weird things as well, that goes about with the right adaptation that, while it's very weird, it's very unsettling, taking this as a Disney icon, Winnie the Pooh, bringing him into live action with this weird stuffed human bear, how they handle that, it's very weird still. But that's also what can make this ultimately work for me, having seen it as of this time. So that's my ranking of all 3 Poohniverse projects, from my least favorite to my favorite thus far. Let me know down in the comments below how you would rank them from your least favorite to your favorite, or if you even dived into this franchise at all, if you're avoiding it like the plague, like it kind of often is for what they're trying to do with these, or are you just all into what is all going on? You love these sort of guilty pleasures type of horror movies that are just weird and offbeat because they're taking lovely Disney characters, making them into horror beasts. So that's just all, and make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.